Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today for an office hours session to discuss the 2024 Resource Tracking Report and how you can submit your data for inclusion in this report. My name is Sammy Luffy. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Director of Research at Funders for LGBTQ Issues. And I will pass it to my colleague who is also online as we make up the research team, Alyssa.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Lother. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the Senior Research Officer at Funders for LGBTQ Issues.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Alyssa. So today we will be talking through the data submission process for the 2024 Resource Tracking Report. So first we'll go through some background to talk about what the report is and describe our methodology. Then we will review our data collection procedures, how we collect data, why we ask for direct submissions, and then what the data submission process is and how you fill out the data submission form. Alyssa will be sharing their screen to be able to show the data submission template in detail in order to kind of answer any questions that you may have. And we'll answer some frequently asked questions. Next slide. Perfect. So what is the resource tracking report? The resource tracking report provides a snapshot of the funding landscape from funding awarded by US-based foundations for LGBTQ communities and causes across the United States. This report reveals gaps and highlights opportunities for foundations to make strategic funding decisions that are within their mandates, but also serve the greatest good for the field. And this report builds on 20 plus years of data collection and analyses. We've been doing this report at Funders for LGBTQ Issues for more than 20 years. And the 2023 Resource Tracking Report, which was just released about 3 months ago, covers calendar year 2023. Next slide, please. So our methodology. Our methodology is guided by our shared commitment to sustainability, transparency, and the durability or replicability and time comparisons of data across different years. The methodology includes only grants that were focused on LGBTQ communities and causes in the United States because the Global Philanthropy Project's biannual Global Resources Report focuses on international LGBTQ funding. And this year we're in 2025 right now for reporting years in 2023 and 2024 will be a global resources report year. So both of our reports will be published in likely June of 2026, which is very exciting. So we're working in close partnership with the Global Philanthropy Project to ensure that they receive all the data from US data from us for inclusion in that report, and we share data on an annual basis. So how do we collect LGBTQ grant data? We receive data from two main sources. First, we do a call for direct submissions from foundations themselves. And so that is likely how you've heard of us and how we've reached out to you for your data directly in the past couple of weeks. We also review Form 990 tax data from the IRS website. This allows us to capture LGBTQ grants that perhaps are a bit smaller, or maybe foundations that only awarded one or two grants or just less funding in a calendar year. So we really augment the direct submissions with this 990 tax data. And so what is the data submission process? The call for data opens annually in early September. We opened ours a bit earlier this year for 2024 data, but really began the outreach process with gusto now in September. And US-based foundations are invited. You are welcome to review the instructions on our webpage. You see some screenshots here of the instructions that are available on our website, which is our Funders for LGBTQ Issues website and research specifically. And then data are due to our research email by Wednesday, October 15th, 2025. We And any questions we may have about submitted data will be asked via email if needed. So we do a review process of all data that are submitted to us in order to ensure that the required tables and data are filled in. And then any questions we may have, we will follow up with folks via email. So now I will pass it to Alyssa to review how you fill out the LGBTQ grant data submission form. Alyssa, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So, like Sammy said, you can go to our website, lgbtfunders.org, then click on research and scroll down to data collection, which are the screenshots we showed on the slides. And there we have instructions and a button to download our data submission template. So this is what it looks like. There are several tabs, starting with a broad set of instructions. Like Sammy mentioned, we collect data in partnership with the Global Philanthropy Project. So this sheet includes information for both funding inside the US and international funding. If you only do international funding, we ask that you submit directly to the Global Philanthropy Project. But if you do only US funding, submit to us. And if you do both, you can submit to us and we will share your international funding with GPP. So these have specific instructions. The first tab we ask is just information about your foundation. So your name, some contact information, and then a bit of information about where your grant making takes place and whether your grant making is LGBTQ specific. If you're at an organization that does entirely LGBTQ funding, that is great. It makes it really easy for us to clear your grants as being LGBTQ. But if not, we ask for a little more information on the sort of grant making level, the grant level. So we have instruction tabs specifically for US-based funding and for international-based funding. So looking at the US specific funding instruction tab, it basically gives all of the fields and how important it is for us to be able to include your data in our reporting. So we need to know what your name is, or if, for example, you're a fiscal sponsor and you're fiscally sponsoring different projects, this is where you would put down the name of the project that you want you want to attribute that specific grant to. We ask for grantee name. You are welcome to leave that anonymous. The reason we ask for it is if we're not sure if a grant is LGBTQ enough to be included in our report, which we'll talk about later, we can look them up and learn more about that organization. We ask for some address information, which is nice to have, but not mandatory. The grant amount obviously is mandatory. We are reporting on the amount of money that is awarded in a calendar year, so in calendar year 2024. And then the duration of the grant and a description of the grant. So, grant description is really important for us, both to identify whether a grant is LGBTQ and also to do some of the population and issue breakdowns that we include in our report. So we ask questions. So we do, for example, breakdowns by the strategy that is being used in this grant making or the issue addressed, as well as sort of LGBTQ subpopulations and other populations like people of color, sex workers, things like that. And so having a detailed grant description is really important for us to be able to do that disaggregating and coding. We also ask for geographic information because people find it really useful to know where grant making is happening and how much grant making is happening in their area. We also have mandatory type of support. So is this a general operating support grant? Is this a program support grant? And that one is mandatory to be included in the tracking report. We also have some drop-down columns for specific LGBTQ subpopulations. So if in your grants management system, for example, you don't have detailed grant descriptions, but you know that grants are focused on a specific LGBTQ subpopulation, those are the columns where you can mark that. So looking at the actual data submission form, as you can see, it is the fields that we just went over. So grantee name, geographic information. A brief mission description is useful, again, to give us a little more information about the grantee and what their focus is. Grant amount, duration, description. And the geographical level and location are drop-down menus. So is it a national focus grant? Is it focused on a specific region, on a specific state, or is it like a specific town or sub-state level? And then the next column is if it's focused at the state or local level, which state or locality is it in? And like I said, those are super useful for us for doing sort of mapping of LGBTQ funding. Similarly, type of support is a drop-down menu with different options, Gen Ops, program sponsorship, or service scholarship, or word to individual. We've been looking into sort of rapid response and emergency funding, so we have a specific column for that, as well as regranting. So if you are found funding to an intermediary who is going to be breaking that grant up and further granting it to other organizations, then let us know. It is super helpful because we have a lot of questions about intermediary work, and we think that people are moving more towards intermediary funding. And it also stops us from double counting money. So if we know that a grant is for regranting, and we expect that we are getting data from you, the regrant, the initial organization, and also to the regranting organization that you have given this grant to, we can make sure that we don't count that money twice. And then these are the population columns. So is it to the LGBTQ community generally? Is it for TGNC people, queer women, intersex people, gay men, two-spirit people, bisexual people, or asexual people? New this year because of our collaboration with GPP is this grant part of a Fund Our Futures campaign commitment? If you don't know what that means, then it is not, and that is fine and great. But if it is helpful to know just so that we can help them track the impact of that campaign. And finally, if there are any notes that don't fit into other columns, you can leave them there and we will read them and address them accordingly as we do our sort of data cleaning process. The international tab is very similar to the US focus tab, and I will not go through it because it is basically the same thing and not the focus of this presentation, but you can go to the Global Philanthropy Project's website, and they also have very explicit instructions for how to fill out that data.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Thanks for walking through the submission template. Sometimes, Excel forms can be really intimidating, can be overwhelming. So we really hope that going through it in this way is helpful to folks, just to ease any anxiety that there might be about filling this out. So to go through some frequently asked questions, is this grant LGBTQ enough? This is a big question that we get all of the time. And so we have developed a heuristic or kind of a standard definition that we've used for many years in order to have comparability across years. So our kind of threshold is 50% or more of the support provided by a grant specifically for LGBTQ issues and communities. This can be indicated in a few ways. First, a foundation may report that all of their grant making is LGBTQ specific. So on that grant maker info tab that Alyssa walked through, there is a column for is all of your foundation's grant making LGBTQ specific? If you report yes, then great. We will be able to then include all of the grants you included then on the US grant making tab. Or if a specific grant entry, so on the US-based grant making tab, if a specific grant entry indicates that the LGBTQ focus of the grant is either through those populations drop down columns or through the grant description. As Alyssa mentioned, having a detailed grant description is really helpful for us because we do a lot of manual checking of the grants throughout the process in order to kind of have double checking, right? And some very like being able to verify various grants. So we are able to review that through looking at the grant description or perhaps the drop down categories you might have selected. Also, if the specific grant was awarded to an LGBTQ organization. So that is really helpful for us when we have the grantee name because we're able to look up that organization and perhaps check on their website and see, oh, yes, their specific and explicit focus of their grant making is for LGBTQ communities and causes, or they might have a particular program or something to that effect. That lets us know that within a reasonable, level of suspicion, 50% or more of the grant was for LGBTQ communities and causes. And then the next question, what are the data privacy guidelines? This is a question that's important now more than ever, given the political and cultural environment that we are in. So we at Funders for LGBTQ Issues take this concern very seriously, and we have developed a data security policy, which is available on our website. It is just below the data submission instructions that Alyssa showed on their screen earlier. And this policy has been reviewed by our legal counsel and is kind of in line with industry standards in order to protect the data that are submitted to us. So we use a secure data Google Drive folder that only select staff members have access to store the data. And we have additional policies and procedures for never sharing foundation and grantee data linked to one another. So these data may be used to develop a state-specific spotlight or another research product, but grantee and foundation relationship data are never shared externally, for example. We have also updated our data privacy guidelines for the report itself. This change really took place for the first time in the 2023 report, which again was released a couple of months ago. And in the past, we have included top funder and top grantee lists in our report that is shared publicly. However, we did not do that in the 2023 report. So there were no top 20 funder lists or, top community foundations or community foundation grantee lists released in the 2023 report. So those data that folks have used in order to do internal organizing can be accessed if folks contact us directly and ask for their foundation's ranking for in 2023. For example, we are very comfortable sharing that level of information, but not necessarily the ranked position of other foundations in the sector. Additionally, what about grantmaker and grantee privacy? Grantmakers can request anonymization. So within the grantmaker tab, as well as the grantee or grant specific data submission tab, you can request and indicate anonymization, either by including anonymous as the name officially, or include the name and then put anonymous in brackets. That lets us know that if these data were to be shared in any other external way, to list them as anonymous. And that is a process we will then follow for as long as those data are being used. Like I mentioned before, we also do not publish or share information about funding relationships between specific grant makers and grantees. Again, that has never been the case, regardless of the political environment. And so that is something we really want everyone to know when submitting data to us, that they will never be linked directly with the grantees that they support. And finally, if you have any questions or would like to dig into this more deeply for your specific foundation, please let us know. In this session today, we will be in breakout rooms, et cetera, if folks have questions. But please contact us, I believe on the next slide. Yep, perfect. You can contact us directly through the research email address, which is right here on the screen, research@lgbtfunders.org. And we will be able to jump on a Zoom or answer any questions via email that you may have about your unique grant making structure in order for us to ensure that your grant making is included as accurately and effectively as possible, because we want to make sure that we're representing the important work that you're doing for LGBTQ communities and causes. And we really appreciate your time and attention here today and your presence on this call. This information will be again shared on our website, but feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Thank you so much.